a sentence, but I feel like that's not enough for you to pick. So it might be, just like a couple of paragraphs. I'll read them out, and then you have to pick which one out of the two that you want to read. And this might help add some books to your TBR, or just a little bit of fun. This pick a book edition is going to be the fantasy edition, and if you like it enough, I might do a romance edition as well. And I tried to pick books that are sort of similar to each other, kind of. They're not like completely different genres or anything like that. And I reckon if you could actually pick any of these just by remembering what the first page was in any of these books, you are insane, because even if it was my favourite book ever, I'm not 100% sure I would know it by its first page, unless it says like the characters' names or something. But I'm going to read the books without using them. I'll tap on them, do all the normal things that I would normally do, and then I will show you the books after you've picked between both. Alright, now let's start with the first page of the first book. Some of these have a prologue in them as well, but I've decided to start at like chapter 1. That's what you have to pick from, the first chapter. Lydia has been missing for 8 days, and I'm beginning to fear that our parents are going to wake up in the morning and find my bed empty too. A noise in the dark alley to my left makes me jump, but it's just a rat tearing through a pile of rubbish. I shivered my way through the city for miles, ignoring hecklers and stepping over half-dead beggars. Usually my parents say to pay them no mind, that they've had the same opportunity to bargain with the Queen as the rest of us, but they're harder to ignore tonight. My freedom is usually limited to turns around the park arm in arm with Mama, or safely ensconced within the velvet walls of our family's carriage. What I lack in experience, I make up for in confidence. That confidence feels a lot flimsier now, lost and cold down to my bones. So that's the first book that you have to pick from. And honestly, I feel like that's a good opener, if I do say so myself. Okay, now I'll grab the next book that you have to choose between. And I will read the first couple of paragraphs. Of all the treasonous acts I've ever committed, this shouldn't have been the one to get me caught. Red water streamed between my fingers with each frantic sponge drag across Marge's door. But even my frothing assault of soap and vinegar wouldn't erase the hunter's mark. I was only spreading the paint around, making a mess of the rose pattern Marge had drawn above the doorknocker last summer. So much for preserving her memory. Footsteps clopped behind me and I spun, heart racing. The air was still fuzzed and dewy as a morning peach, the jewel-toned houses barely flushed with colour. I had to squint to see the figures through the haze. I exhaled in a sharp blast. Not the guards, just some children racing along the mosaic-encrusted road, too caught up in their daughter to notice me. They rounded the corner and the street turned into a sleepy silence, the silver penny blossom trees rustling like sequins in the wind. But a few streets away, the market was yawning awake and exhaling the stench of roses. Soon the festivity of rose season would drag locals from their beds. I was running out of time. if you picked book 2, you are going to read Thorn Season by Kira Azar. This one I haven't read, but that first page sounded intriguing. Alright. Now, were you happy with that choice? If not, you've got quite a few others here to choose from. Let's go with the second round, book 1 or book 2. Let me flip to page 1. Blood drips into my right eye once, twice. It's blinding and searing at the same time. I wince, letting out a pain whimper. It fucking burns. Blood in the eye. The pain is real. The whimper is not. If there's one thing I've learned in my 23 years alive, it's this. Women in pain give men confidence. It stirs up something instinctive deep inside them and makes them believe they have the upper hand, even if every logical part of evidence screams at them that they do not. Confidence makes men sloppy, and sloppy men are easy targets. We're in some old amber wine warehouse in the southern quarter tonight. The air reeking of rotting fruit, torches burn around the edges of the ring, illuminating our fight and casting everything else in twisting, dancing shadows. The crowd is hushed in anticipation, but even so the room seems full. Good. A bigger crowd means a bigger pot of winnings. Okay. So that was book 1. Book 1. Did that sound interesting to you? What do you think? Okay, let's try the second book. We will skip to page 1. Dogfights are barbaric. They say the fighters in the ring revel in violence. They say the wolf inside them is always looking for a release. Even on nights like tonight when the moon is not full and they look like men. And don't they deserve violence for what they've done to our lands? Yet how many will die, and for what? I shift on the wooden chair, tugging at the high collar of my gown, then pushing an errant strand of red hair out of my face. It's hot in here, too hot, claustrophobic. When I stepped out of the carriage 2 days ago, the rugged landscape of the borderlands called to something deep inside of me, even though I have never been this far north before. Thinking of what lies beyond those stone walls makes me want to rip off this dress and escape this castle. I want to tear through the untamed grass and feel the wild dandelions between my toes. I want to smell the pine trees and hear the wind howling through the mountains. definitely really mispronouncing that last name. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I have read Diebound and loved Diebound. I have not read The Wolf King, but I really want to. It's quite high on my TBR. Are you happy with your choice? Okay, let's do another round. Round three. Let's skip to the first page. I know Mario Sparks started at the startled chicken that had materialized on her kitchen counter. That wasn't what I meant to do. At the kitchen table, Caldia Cuddington nearly choked on her tea. Well, that's surprising. At least they both have wings. Mariel gave her friend a look. She recited a summoning spell for an air sprite, not poultry. Literally the only thing they have in common. Points for creativity, despite the joke. Caladia's wince was sympathetic. As a witch and Mariel's longtime friend, she knew how upsetting it is for Mariel to mess up a spell yet again. It's a basic summoning spell, not a Jackson Pollock painting. Mariel blew a stray curl out of her face, frowning at the surprise avian guest currently preening its ruffled feathers next to her toaster. Her spells often backfired, but this was a new level of fucked upness. So that is the first one. Okay. Now, the second. Get to choose between these two. Let's read the first page of this one. I've always maintained that a woman in possession of a vast imagination would want for nothing in life. She'd be superior to those with such fleeting virtues as wit, beauty, or accomplishment. The richest woman in the world, if only in her mind. Today, I'd settle for being merely punctual. Instead, I'm an hour late, rushing through the streets of floating hope, my mood not nearly as optimistic as the town's name. To think I started my morning in high spirit, that, of course, was before I missed my train stop, disembarked at the next one, caught the first train back by the skin of my teeth, got lost in town, and then finally, my most grievous of errors, asked a will-o-wisp for directions. I was warned about wisps in my visitor's brochure, which included a handy list of dangers a human should avoid while visiting the Isle of Fairies. It detailed everything from fey bargains to death by Kelpie. I found the warnings oddly amusing and promptly restyled them in my notebook. Under the title 14 Ways to Die in Fairy Way, and an illustrated guide. If only my sketch of the wisp had been even remotely accurate, then maybe I'd have recognised the blue flame-like creature for what it was. So, two very whimsical type books to choose from there. Which one would you prefer? Book 1 or book number 2? So, if you picked book number 1, you chose A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley. I didn't quite get around to reading this for which I like. So that's book 1. The second book, if you picked book 2, you chose A Rivalry of Hearts by Sonia Odette. A Rivalry of Hearts by Sonia Odette. And this one I have read, and it is very whimsical and funny and silly and a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend this, especially if you liked the sound of the first page. Alright, moving on. Your next choice is between It was Bisma's 18th birthday, which meant it was time for goodbye. But there were hours until then. She would not think of it now. Instead, Bisma got up from her bed, a soft spread of leaves above a thick branch, moulded perfectly for her body. She stood and stretched, looking around the room she occupied in her home. A massive treehouse in the centre of enchanted forest. The other girls weren't as comfortable with heights, but Bisma loved the feeling of being above the entire world. So her room was the very highest. It suited her just fine, with 7 of them occupying the home. She, Ava, the eldest at 21, and Deba, the youngest at 2. Bisma relished the quiet up here, walking across the weathered wood floor. Bisma went to the centre of the room, where the tree's massive trunk rooted all the rooms together. She stuck her head through the opening, down the stairs that twisted and turned around the trunk, connecting every portion of their home. So, book number 1 for you. What did you think of that first page? What did you think? And if you didn't like the sound of that one, then we have this one to choose from. So it's interesting. So some of the chapters, first chapter pages are longer than others. So that's why sometimes I'll, flip over and read the last sentence on the next page. This one's a bit longer in the first one. Yula never thought the flames would reach the library. She was dimly aware that most of the other librarians had fled weeks ago when the revolutionaries took the palace and defenestrated the emperor in a rather dramatic display. But surely they wouldn't touch the library. After all, there were books here, highly flammable, irreplaceable books. The great library of Alcyon, with its soaring spires, stained glass windows, and labyrinth bookshelves, was the jewel of the Crescent Islands Empire. Its hallowed stacks were filled with centuries-old treaties, history studies, and most importantly, in Keela's opinion, spellbooks. Only the elite, the creme de la creme of the scholars, were allowed to even view the spellbooks, as only the rarefied few were permitted by imperial law to use magic. She was responsible for the spellbooks on the 3rd floor, east wing. For the past 11 years she'd worked, slept, ate, and lived between the shelves, which perhaps explained why, when she first smelled smoke, she thought she'd simply left toast on the cook plate. So that was book number 2. So, would you rather book 1 or book 2? Book 2, book 2, book 2, book 2, book 2, book 2. If you picked book number 1, you picked Queshy. Amna Queshy. If you picked book number 2, you picked The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. And these two, I believe, are cozy fantasy books. I have not read either of them yet. If you have, let me know if you liked them. Let's move on. Your next choice is between this one there's a few things at the start of this one that gives any hints. If poison was a woman's weapon, then Ren Embervale was a woman through and through. It was an art she'd relished in the 5 years since the Shadow War, a mantle of revenge she'd taken up against those who'd played their part in spreading the darkness that had cloaked the mid-realms for so long. The stain of what they'd done had lingered. Time had not yet closed all the wounds that the war had left, but slowly the world had found its rhythm once more, and so had Ren. The noble houses, the politicians, corruption was a disease that ran rampant through them all, and slowly but surely Ren had been cutting it out one by one, dose by dose. And that was what had brought her to the opulent parlour before her now. Thick rugs covered much of the marble floor. The papered walls were clad with gold filigree frames and oil paintings. The furniture was upholstered in decadent emerald green velvet. An overly large birdcage hung on the stand at the far corner. Empty. That was book number 1. Book number 1 for you to choose from. I feel like there was a lot of clues in that one. If you'd read this, you probably know what book it is. Next book you get to choose between. In late September, I boarded a train. The smokestack left plumes in our wake, dirtying the carriage windows, and I wondered if the smoke had followed us from home. I pressed my nose to the glass and made out the silhouette of Scurry in the distance, then saluted the town with my middle finger and turned away from it forever. The carriage was filled to the brim with children, 12 years of age, fraying socks soot on their eyelashes and mush in their heads, I imagined. Lady chaperones in long woolen skirts and slickened faces stumbled down the aisle against inertia. One leaned across the seat and flattened the lace-trimmed collar of my blouse without looking me in the eye. They yelled ineffectually at those hung over their seats, at the boys who dared take off their caps, at the girls who bunched their dresses above the knee. Sit proper, wipe your nose, roll your sleeves. The pleas went unnoticed. The children of Scurry bickered and caterwauled. We were teeming and swelling and spilling over with adventure. Something new was upon us, something far apologies again. I'm very sorry. And if you picked book two, you picked a forbidden alchemy. Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwen. And I have a soft spot for Stacey because she's Australian. So we like to support the Australian authors. And this has cool sprayed edges. Alright, next choice for you. Looking down at the boy strapped to the metal table before her, Kiva Meridian leaned in close and whispered, "Take a deep breath." Before he could blink, she braced his wrist and stabbed the tip of a white-hot blade into the back of his hand. He screamed and thrashed against her. They always did, but she tightened the grip and continued carving 3 deep lines into his flesh, forming a Z. A single character to identify him as a prisoner at Salendorf. The wound would heal, but the scar would remain forever. Kira worked as fast as she could and only eased her grip once the carving was complete. She repressed the urge to tell him that the worst had passed. While barely a teenager, he was still old enough to discern the truth from lies. He belonged to Salendorf now. The metal band around his wrist labelled him as inmate H67L129. There was nothing good in his future. Liked him would do no favours. I feel like that one, if you've read it, would have also given away a lot. I think you could probably pick that book from that first page. Next one to choose from, that one I just read or this one. Alize stitched in the kitchen by the light of the star and fire, sitting as she often did, curled up inside the hearth. Soot stained her skin and skirts in haphazard streaks, smudged along the crest of her cheek, a dusting of yet more darkness above one eye she didn't seem to notice. Alize was cold, no, she was freezing. She often wished she was a body with hinges, that she might throw open a door to a chest and fill its cavity with coal, then kerosene, strike a match. Alas, she tucked up her skirts and shifted near the fire, careful lest she destroy the garment she still owed the illegitimate daughter of the Losian ambassador. The intricate glistening piece was her only order this month, but Alice nursed a secret hope that the gown would conjure clients in its own, for such fashionable commissions were, after all, the direct result of an envy born only in a ballroom, around a dinner table. So long as the kingdom remained at peace, the royal elite, legitimate and illegitimate alike, would continue to host parties and incur debt, which meant Alize might yet find ways to extract coin from their embroidered pockets. So, are you picking number 1 or 2? Tell me now. Okay. Book 1. The Prison Healer. By Lynette Nooney. If you've read this, did you guess this one? Did you guess it right? Did you guess it correct? So Lynette Nooney is an Australian author as well. And I haven't read this series, but I was just looking in here when I was doing this, picking books. And then it says in here, to Sarah J. Mass, thank you for being so generous with your friendship, support and encouragement, but mostly thank you for believing in me, and especially when I didn't. So that's cool that they must be friends, because she's also, Sarah J. Maas is also blurbed up here saying Lynette Nooney is a masterful storyteller, a must-read for any fantasy lover. I thought that was a fun fact I thought I'd share. Okay, so that's book 1. And book number 2 is This Woven Kingdom. This Woven Kingdom by Tara Murphy. Are you happy with your choice now that you've seen the books? The peculiar gargoyle, who spoke mostly in broken parables, shuffled to the dim corner of the ambulatory. There, strung between iron candlesticks, a spider's web held a fly captive. Incessant buzzing, the gargoyle wagged a limestone finger at the fly, his craggy voice echoing through the cathedral. Serves you right. If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. Watch where you are going. Now, he leaned close and peered at the web. Hold still, I'm going to extract you from this snare. He did not extract the fly. He went on lecturing the poor insect on the dangers of flight. Had the fly been capable of reason, it might have concluded it was better to die in the clutches of a spider than be subject of this particular gargoyle's attentions. But the fly could not speak, and thus uttered no complaint. It just kept on buzzing, and the gargoyle kept on talking. Now, I think that one is pretty obvious too if you've read it, or even for me, just seen some reviews about it. I think I might have been able to figure out what this one was. Next one you get to choose from is I was 9 the first time the physicians came to the house. My uncle and his men were away. My cousin Ione and her brothers played loudly in the kitchen, and my aunt did not hear the pounding at the door until the first man in white robes was already in the parlour. She did not have time to hide me. I was asleep, resting like a cat in the window. When she shook me awake, her voice was thick with fear. "Go to the wood," she whispered, unlatching the window and gently pushing me through the casement to the ground below. I did not fall onto warm summer grass. My head struck stone and I blinked, dizzy nausea casting dark shapes across my vision. My head hallowed in red, sticky warmth. I heard them in the house, their steps heavy with sinister intent. because the next one is very obvious, very obvious. The next sentence is very obvious if you've read it or what it is, and honestly it's probably already very obvious. But did you pick book 1 or did you pick book 2, 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 book 2? So book 1 was the night and the moth. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Did you guess this by the gargoyle? Did you? And the next one. Did you get this one? One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. One dark window. One dark window. So I've read this one. Love this. So I had to get this special edition, which has claws, the forest. Very cool. Very cool. So are you happy with your choice between these two? Have you read these? I haven't read The Night and the Moth yet, but of course I really want to. Okay, we've got one more to choose from. Okay. The first one. The clock on my nightstand had ticked close to midnight when I finally abandoned my sheets and hefted open my rickety window pane. There weren't many times I'd snuck out, especially on nights where I damn well knew I needed as much sleep as I could get. But these rarities always involved my best friend Quinn. Whenever she left a little painted rock on my windowsill, it meant meet me at house ASAP. The green painted stone that squatted outside my window now had appeared there nearly an hour ago, but Fabian and Dom's creaking footsteps outside my door had only just faded into their own room. My father wouldn't punish me for sneaking out, not like Quinn's strict mind-manipulating mother would, but I still had no desire to watch their faces sink into disappointment if they caught me dropping into our flower garden the night before my world changed forever. Sounds pretty good. 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 And lastly, you get to choose between this book. Loudy hadn't bothered to lock her bedroom door. She had come to accept that it was rather pointless to pretend that secure locks and protective wards would make a difference. There was simply no avoiding the inevitable. So when she woke to a set of hands clamped over her mouth, the familiar scent of peppermint and sandalwood wafting up her nose, she wasn't all that surprised. In fact, she'd been expecting it. What disconcerted her was the strange dream of her mother she'd been having only moments earlier. She always found it odd that they still held the ability to sleep and dream. The dead weren't meant to dream, though she supposed they weren't dead, not really. if